In this lesson, we continue working with primary corrections. As I have mentioned, the source material can be generated in a number of ways. Differences can occur in color depth, resolution, bitrate, or the codec. These parameters will also affect grading. For instance, if we use as our source material, say, an 8-bit MP4 file with 10 megabit bitrate per second, we won't be able to make such extensive color or exposure changes as could be done, for example, with raw DNG source files. In the color panel, there are two similarly looking files. The first one is 8-bit with lower bitrate, and the second one is DNG raw. Let's look at how much information is stored in the darker part of the picture for each of the formats. First, the 8-bit image. In primary corrections, I set gamma so that the dark area brightens as much as possible. The picture is starting to show defects. It becomes extremely grainy, lacks color scale, and all compression marks become visible. In order to use such picture, we would have to make only a minute correction that would not affect so much area. Let's do a reset and change gamma only a little bit. Let's turn to the raw DNG format. For raw formats, there is a window labeled Camera Raw in the program settings, where the necessary parameters can be generally set for individual camera type, be it ARRI, RED, Sony, Blackmagic Design, or Phantom. Since we're using a DNG file, let's open Cinema DNG settings. Here we can set parameters for the entire project as well as for each used clip. However, the parameters are grayed and cannot be set at the moment, so I first change the decoding method from camera metadata to project. Now the parameters can be set and adjusted, although we cannot see these real changes in the picture, so here I suggest changing only those parameters that you're certain you wish to change for the entire project. It could be, for example, color space, that is, whether you'd like to display the raw material in linear or film log space. Raw parameters can be set for each clip individually by clicking this icon. Here we choose again whether we want to use metadata from the camera, the project setup which we just finalized in the settings window, or whether we want to adjust just this individual clip. Here we can choose to change the color space and gamma, as well as other parameters that will brighten the picture, darken it, or change its saturation or sharpness. The changes we make are seen immediately in the viewer window. So if I adjust, say, the exposure, we notice right away that compared to the 8-bit picture, the picture's dark area stores much more information. By changing the parameters, we achieve a much more balanced input picture for grading than with the previous 8-bit video. Switching into it, we clearly see that here such parameter setting option is unavailable. The picture we achieved after fine-tuning raw parameters can then be adjusted equally as with any other format. We set lift, then gain, fine-tune gamma. Let's lower the saturation a little. I mentioned LUT tables in previous lessons. There are two LUT table types, 1D and 3D. For the purposes of this tutorial, it suffices to know that 3D tables are more precise than 1D tables, so you'll be mostly looking in the 3D menu when searching for tables to use. A LUT table serves the transfer of colors from one color space into another, for instance from logarithmic to linear space. It means that the table contains information on how to convert values. For example, when the input material's RGB values are 555, the LUT instructs their conversion into 8, 12, and 15. This means that the LUT table results in certain grading of the material. If we remained only with primary corrections in grading, our results, that is, our completed grading, could also be written into a LUT table. And it is precisely this option that DaVinci offers. In Individual Shots menu, we'll look for the 3D LUT generation option. We could also transfer the generated LUT into a nonlinear editor and apply it to our source file there. We'd achieve a graded video precisely identical to the one we now have in DaVinci Resolve. So let's look at where LUT tables can be activated in DaVinci Resolve. In the color panel, we have a clip made in Blackmagic film format. For its transfer into nonlinear space, we want to use the LUT that comes directly from the camera's manufacturer. We locate the Lookup Tables panel in Settings. We want to apply the LUT at the point of input, that is, when the file is imported and it should be a 3D table. Therefore, we set it here. The LUT will be applied onto all videos in our project. Now I will undo the setting. If we have videos from multiple cameras in our timeline, it will be more effective to apply the LUT to them individually. Let's do so in the first node. Open the menu with a right-click and select the appropriate table from 3D LUT. After that, we work with the video in the linear Rec. 709 space. In some videos, when the camera moves, exposure can also change with time. It means that the beginning of the video requires a different correction than the end. We need to animate the correction values. Let's set corrections for the beginning, in this case the sky. We switch to the Keyframes panel. This panel shows timeline of the video we are currently working with. We can move along the timeline as in the storyboard window. Let's move the cursor to the place that will become the final frame for this correction and, with a right-click, select Add Dynamic Keyframe. We have created a keyframe, a place on the timeline where our correction will be applied. Again, we move along and locate a place we wish to correct. Here the picture should be brighter. Let's make the correction. And add the keyframe. An animation is created on the timeline. Between the beginning and the first keyframe, the correction does not change. But starting with the first keyframe, our correction begins to change smoothly into the second one. If we move along, we notice that here the sky is no longer visible and that the picture could be even lighter. We make the third correction. And add the keyframe. If we wish to slightly move our keyframes and fine-tune the animation, we can do so easily by dragging a keyframe into its new position. Animations can be created for each node individually. We're using only one node, so we see just corrector 1 in the list. If we added another node, Corrector 2, in which no animations have been created, of course, would be added into the animation window. In Corrector 1, keyframes have been created for all parameters that can be animated in Node 1. Though, if we're animating one parameter, it would be more effective to create keyframes just for this individual parameter, in our case, color corrector. Automatic keyframe creation can also be used for animation. It can be activated here. So, a new keyframe is created automatically if we change any of the parameters. Animations can also be deactivated. Keyframes can be erased using the Delete button. For a moment, let's return to copying a grade from one video to another. In an earlier lesson, I showed you a very simple way of copying, using the middle mouse button. However, in DaVinci Resolve, there are additional methods of copying information. For example, if we need to copy information just from one node to next, for instance from the second node of this shot into this shot in the third node, it can be done simply using copy and paste functions. The appropriate keyboard shortcuts should work just as well. Another method is copying through gallery. We can place our correction into the Stills window from the menu using Grab Stills command. Switch to the shot where we want to copy the correction. With a right-click, call up the menu and select Add Correction, and the correction has been copied. In this lesson, we discussed the advantages of raw format, illustrated an activation of a LUT table, as well as correction animation, and at the end, learned about methods of copying corrections between videos.